have to think about what problems they are there to solve.
Thank you so much. As soon as Alyse finishes and you have questions, why don't you grab something and then we'll do the faculty panel, okay? So we'll hear from Alyse and then we'll go to this.
Be quick.
Yes, and I'll be quick in introducing you as well. My name is Eva Fernandez. I'm from Queens College, one of the CUNYs that doesn't have a subway stop. I'm the director of the teaching center there, and I'm also assistant vice provost. And the role I enjoy the most is evangelizing about using technology to teach well. I'm here to introduce Alyse Hachey, who has a provocative title for the presentation, What the Data Reveal. With all due respect to all the other presenters, I think this is probably the most important presentation today because the most robust way I can think of confirming intuitions and debunking myths around online education is through solid studies. And this is exactly what Alyse dedicates her work to. Alyse is a professor and deputy chair in the teacher education department at BMCC. She is also adjunct assistant professor at Teachers College in education and psychology. She teaches early childhood professionals, but she's got deep experience and excellent expertise in educational technology and in teaching online, as well as being a prolific researcher who focuses on online education. She's got support from prestigious groups, including the American Educational Research Association and the National Science Foundation. Alyse Hachey, welcome.
Now I got to live up to that. I'm not alone in this research, though. I'm here representing two of my co-researchers also. One happens to be Kay Conway from the business department at BMCC, and the other person is Claire Willatis, who's in the math department at BMCC. And all three of us have over a decade teaching online learning and doing research in this area. In 2010, we formed an interdisciplinary research group to really look at online learning, specifically at the community college level. And this comes from the fact that the literature shows that online learning is very predominant at community colleges. Over 97% of community colleges in the United States offer some type of online course. And since 2010, enrollment rates at community colleges in online learning have risen about 29% or more. So this is actually a largely unexplored area in the literature. Most of the research on online learning is from senior college, four-year colleges, both where they're pulling the data from and the researchers. Even the couple big studies that have been done on community colleges are done by four-year institutes. So the three of us came together to take this on as professors in the trenches. We're community college professors, we're dedicated to community college learning, and we're dedicated to community college online learning. Oops. And it doesn't show everything. That's okay, I'll talk. The focus of our research has a couple different areas. We were very interested in enrollment, and several of the studies that I'm going to share with you today talk about enrollment and enrollment patterns. In particular, we're concerned with enrollment restrictions, and how they relate to the open access mission of community colleges, and also enrollment trends that show that different student groups are not taking advantages of the advantages of online learning and what that might mean to access and college persistence. Another really important, we're really focusing on community college online retention. The research shows that online retention in the United States is about 30 to 40% less than face-to-face courses, and that actually it reports a 7 to 20% gap between face-to-face and online attrition. Again, this is all reported mostly from four-year colleges, though, so we are questioning, does this hold true at the community college level? Another area that we are really focused on is how can we identify the at-risk community college student? How can we do it so that we can target support? Community colleges in general, online programs everywhere, are overburdened in many different ways. And so if we can find ways where we can target support to the at-risk student, it's going to make best use of resources. And a last major area, which has been a focus all along but is now taking on, and I'll share when I show you what the future of this research is we're exploring in specifically STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics online learning, and looking at some enrollment, some outcomes, and some different things related to that. So far, since 2010, we have 13 peer-reviewed publications and 1 book chapter and 1 million more submitted. And I'm not going to share all of them with you today. I'm going to share some of the published ones that I think have the most interesting results. This research that I'm sharing has been funded by a series of PSC CUNY grants, a C3 IRG grant, and an AERA AIR grant. So the first study I'd like to share some information about was looking at enrollment at community college and restricting enrollment. The question we asked was, will a 2.0 grade point restriction on enrollment impact the attrition rates? If we do not allow students who are on academic probation, are we going to help with attrition? Previous data that supported this or suggested that this might be something to do is looks at grade point averages as a predictor of online outcomes. But it became problematic when you're talking to a community college because we're about open access. So we're talking about denying students some of the rights to enroll in a particular medium. What did we find in this research? Well, one thing we found is we did confirm the other research that's mostly reported for 4-year colleges, that there is an attrition gap, at least at the community college level we found, of about 10% between online and face-to-face courses. So that fell right within the 7 to 20 that's reported in the literature. But the most surprising thing we found is that restricting enrollment to students and not allowing students who are on academic probation will not have a significant effect on online retention. And this was very surprising for us. In fact, what we found is that if you really did want to impact online retention, that you needed to have a cutoff of 3.0, which would drastically impact access to students, and it just becomes not worth it at that point. Students in the middle range, 2.0 to 3.5, had the most proportional differences in attrition between online and face-to-face. And we actually found that there was no difference if you had 2.0 or below, or 3.5 and above, which is fascinating. It was to us, at least. And that actually, if we restrict those ones who are below, these may be the only classes, because of life issues or whatever that's impacting their grade point to begin with, that they may be able to take. And so the question, it becomes a college persistence and access thing. So what this research really suggests is that GPA may not be and GPA restrictions may not be the best focus for community colleges if they're trying to increase retention. There. The next study looked at what is the impact of course type on retention. We focus on 2 key factors here that may be impacting online retention. The student's reason for taking the course, is it an elective or is it a requirement? And the course difficulty level. And you got to remember, I'm talking at the community college level here. So when we say a lower level course, we're talking about a 100 level introductory. And a higher level in this case is 200 or above, because it's a community college. And what did we find? Well, that lower level courses drastically impact the likelihood of withdrawal. If they're taking 100 level courses as online courses, that they have a much higher chance of withdrawal, and we don't see this effect in face-to-face courses. And that in particular, if it's a lower level and it's taken as an elective or a distributional requirement, they're much, much more likely to drop out of online courses. So this study really indicated to us that the reason for students taking lower level courses, why they're taking it, and if they're lower level, will impact with withdrawal. And we did not see this in face-to-face. And so it really suggests that the reason for them taking courses counts, and that if we target learner support towards those lower level courses, that there's a potential there to increase retention. In our next study, we looked at, is prior online experience correlated to future online success? Did it not do it? Why is it? Yes, there we go. I got to push it twice, I guess. Sorry. again, a lot of the research that we did was pulled from hypotheses and suppositions that were either in the literature or had been shown potentially, or there were mixed results at the 4-year. And so intuitively, it seems to make sense that if you've had prior experience in anything, that you'll do better on it. But we needed to actually do the research so that we had the hard data to say this. I will note that we're talking about success here, and we define success as a C- or above, which is just a standard that we assumed for all of our studies. The answer here is a resounding yes. Prior online course experience is very strongly correlated to future online success. So what does this suggest to us? Well, a couple things. That we need to focus on those unsuccessful but have enrolled again students, because they are going to be the ones who are going to have a higher risk. And the other thing is that we want to encourage those who have been successful on online learning to take it again, because they have a higher chance of success again. It's twice. That's what the problem is. This next study, and the ones that I'm sharing with you now are on general online learning. We did a couple other things, but these are all general, looking at the totality of it. Do prior online course outcomes provide more information than GPA alone? So we had done some research looking at GPA as a predictor. We'd done some research at looking at prior experience. Now we wanted to know, is there an interaction? If we look at both of those factors together, what are we going to find? So prior online course outcomes, pre-enrollment GPA were used as predictors for outcomes, and we assessed the interaction. And what we found is that prior online experience beat out GPA as a predictor. If the students had not taken a previous online class, then GPA was an okay predictor. But if they had taken an online class, you wanted to look at what they did in that online class, their GPA didn't give you as much information anymore. And so, again, we need to support those students who are doing poorly and re-enrolling in online courses, is what we're finding here. The next two studies I'm going to share, we were specifically looking at minority students and minority enrollment and outcomes. The first one we looked at was, are there online course enrollment differences among students, different student groups at the community college level? The answer, yes. Minority students do not enroll at the same rate as their white student peers. And in fact, we found that Black and Hispanic students, regardless of course medium, have lower GPAs than white and Asian Pacific student peers. And this really supports other research that suggests that Black and Hispanic students in general need support at the community college level in progressing through college. But we did find that both Black and Hispanic students don't enroll in the online environment as readily as their white peers. And this really suggests that we need to look at why, maybe some qualitative research as to why, why is this happening? And also, if we're going to really focus on equal access, then doing some recruitment of these minority groups that are not utilizing a medium for continuing education that's available to them. One of the things from this study that we sort of hypothesize or are wondering about is the impact of ESL and how writing intensive online courses are. And so that could be a possible future to see if that's having impact on this finding we found. That first study that I just talked about, minority students, we used community college data. You've figured it out, it's BMCC data. We used about a decade of BMCC data. This next study took it a little farther in two ways. One is we wanted to look are there differences in enrollment by ethnicity. In particular, since that we speculated that Hispanic students might be even more non-enrolling in online courses. But this time we controlled for several different factors: non-traditional student characteristics, academic preparation, social economic status, and ESL immigration status. I want to mention, define what non-traditional student characteristics is, just to explain where our definition comes from the National Center for the Educational Statistics, and they classify a student as being non-traditional if they have one or more of the following characteristics: delayed enrollment, no high school diploma, part-time enrollment, financially independent, has dependents, single parent status, or works full-time. So we controlled for all of those factors, plus GPA, SES, ESL, immigration status. Our second question was, is there a gap between the outcomes in minority students? Particularly, we were looking at Latino students and non-Hispanic white students in the online environment. For this study, the second part that made it a little bigger is we used samples from the Northeast, New York State, and also BMCC. So now we're looking at regional data, and this regional data came from the National Center for Educational Statistics. We got access to some restricted databases that gave us a much broader sample. The answers for this one are yes and no. What's the yes part? Well, again, we found that minority students, now at a regional level, are much less likely to enroll in online courses than their white student peers. In particular, for New York State and the Northeast in general, Hispanic students, Latino students, were very under-enrolled in online learning. Again, this was when we were controlling for all those student factors. We need to know why. This is what it really told us. Now we're finding at a bigger level that Hispanic students are not taking advantage of online learning. However, we did not find differences in outcomes, online versus face-to-face. No differences between Black and Hispanic students and their white student peers. And I know this is counter to some of the research that was cited, I guess, in a previous study. I know Zhu and Jaggers have found differences in outcomes. But in this particular study and a follow-up study I'm going to share, we did not find differences in outcomes. We only found differences in enrollment patterns. Is that different? No. If I can learn the clicker, we'll be all set. The next series of studies that I'm going to share with you, this last series, are specific to STEM online learning. We have a particular focus in STEM, and so now we're not looking at online learning in general. We're looking at just those courses that are STEM, and we're using the National Center for Educational Statistics definition of STEM, which I will note does include both lab and non-lab courses. One area that we think for future study might be interested is to look specifically at lab courses, but this one includes non-lab courses too, so I just wanted to make that clear. We used a decade, again, of BMCC online research. We were very careful to match the courses taught by the same instructor, both online, face-to-face, and we only used instructors who had at least 3 semesters of online experience. So we're doing everything we can to control for the effective teacher in this, because teacher has been shown in the research to have a major effect on outcomes. The reason for this study and for the following studies is there's actually very, very little research in general on STEM online learning. It's shocking to me, given how big STEM is and how it is in the national forefront, that really there's been no concentrated look at STEM online learning. And forget if you're talking at the community college level. Half of all bachelor's and master's degrees in STEM fields, students start at the community college level. So this is a really important sort of pipeline that leads them into these major degrees. So we asked, is there a difference, or is there, how does it affect? What does it affect? And the answer is yes, there is effect. Retention rates in STEM courses, online courses, are decreased by the online environment. So we're going to have less retention, less success in the online environment for STEM courses in comparison to face-to-face. In particular, lower level courses, again, these 100 level courses, or courses taken as electives in STEM courses had very high dropout. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's putting our study at the bottom. I didn't tell it to do that. It's just doing it on its own. Do prior online experiences and GPA predict online core STEM outcomes? So now we took that study where we did it generally looking at the interaction between GPA and prior online experience, and we looked at it specifically for STEM courses. And we found, again, the answer is yes, that students with higher GPAs were more likely to have successfully completed prior online, but if you had successfully completed prior online, you were much more likely to do better. It was a great predictor of subsequent course success. Got it. I'm good. So prior online course experience, again, added significant information about the likelihood of STEM, this time STEM outcomes, even when we control for GPA again. And again, this thing that we have to look at students' prior records. When they are enrolling for the first time in an online course, we can use GPA to indicate risk. But after that, we really have to look and see what they did before. Our next question was, are there differences in online STEM outcomes by ethnicity, gender, non-traditional characteristics? So now we want to know, well, a couple things. One is I want to mention that we're using that same definition of non-traditional characteristics. And it's been previously hypothesized in the literature that online learners are more likely to have these non-traditional student characteristics. And in fact, when we look at national data, about 88% of community college students have one or more, in comparison to four-year students where only about 44% have one or more of these risk factors. So again, this non-traditional student risk is something that needs to be considered when we're talking about online learning. And we found a couple interesting things. One is that older students, and again, we're adopting the NCES definition, which is age 24 or older. So that makes a lot of us here older. Okay, 24, not me. Older students do significantly better in online STEM courses. Why? We don't know yet, but it's an interesting finding that bears some more research, is that the older you are, the better you seem to do in online STEM courses. Women did significantly worse online than expected given their face-to-face outcomes, although still not horribly worse compared to men. And there was no significant interaction between online medium and ethnicity for STEM courses. Again, this finding is counter than previous research that was discussed today. So we found it generally, and we found it for STEM, that it's not the medium, according to what our results, that matter. We then look to see if course level factors predict online outcomes in STEM. And the answer is yes. What we found is the results show that while career STEM courses had significantly higher success rates face-to-face than liberal art courses, they had significantly higher rates than would be expected. There was an interaction. Basically, we found that they also had a significant higher rate than would be expected given face-to-face. So they do better, they're higher in face-to-face, and there is interaction in the online environment. We also find that elective STEM courses had higher success rates face-to-face than STEM major requirements, but they had lower rates online than would it be expected given the face-to-face. So again, we're finding an interaction between course type. We took this research a little farther, though, and we did propensity score matching to generate a matched subsample of the group based on certain student characteristics, which we had found important in previous studies. So we started matching students on things like age, full-time, part-time, whether they got financial aid, GPA, and prior online experience. And when we created a matched subsample and we ran this again, we actually found that the differences in course outcomes by course type were no longer significant. So what this suggests to us is that higher risk is not the course itself, it's not the STEM course itself. Instead, it's the students who tend to pool in these different courses. It still gives an opportunity for targeted intervention, though. If we know that certain types of courses are higher at risk, whether it's because of the course itself or because of the students who tend to enroll in those, we can still target those courses for support. And the last study, there is an end to this. I promise, lunch is coming. The last study that I'd like to share is what is the representation of minority, female, and non-traditional student STEM majors in the online environment at community colleges. For this study, we were able to access national data, again, restricted databases from the NCES. And so this actually looks at nationally representative sample of over 2,000 community colleges in the United States. What we did is we examined which groups may be underrepresented in STEM online and to identify which characteristics differ significantly between online and face-to-face students. Here we found at the national level, it mirrors previous things that we found for online STEM courses. We found that, so now we've moved from BMCC to regional data to national data. We're moving up in the world. And what we found is that Hispanic students were significantly less likely to enroll in online STEM courses. In particular, Black and Hispanic males were underrepresented. Ooh, I saw all these sad faces, I know. Women were significantly more likely to enroll in online STEM courses. And again, students with non-traditional student characteristics significantly more likely